The Competitive Enterprise Institute members talking upstairs. The Competitive Enterprise Institute was joined, or we joined them, our organization being the Science Environmental Policy Project, in the litigation against the EPA for its unrealistic finding that carbon dioxide endangers human health and welfare. I'm Ken Hoppola, the Executive Vice President of the Science Environmental Policy Project, and it's my pleasure to have this panel here who will be discussing communication. I like to call it communicating with the public, tell the truth or exaggerate. Probably the high point of communication for the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change occurred in 2007 when they announced the summary for policymakers at a great love fest in Paris, complete with fireworks. It was a magnificent occasion. The IPCC went on to co-win the Nobel Peace Prize, along with Al Gore. And that was the highlight of the IPCC and Al Gore. Since then, it's becoming evident that the science is faulty. The claims in the summary for policymakers are not supported by the actual science, and many things are greatly exaggerated. After ClimateGate revealed significant problems within the IPCC and its scientists, many IPCC and global alarmist scientists said the problem is communicating with the public. We have to learn how to communicate with the public better. Now, I find that difficult to believe because they used to hire some of the finest advertising firms in the world to promote their product. What they should be doing is examining the holes in their science, and particularly the failure of the models, or excuse me, the failure of Mother Earth to obey global climate models. There is huge problems, and the models should be validated and verified. They have not been. However, it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. What we see is the U.S. government has a massive vested interest in promoting climate alarmism. For the past 4 years, according to this memorandum from the Congressional Research Service, the U.S. government has spent $70 billion on climate-related activities. This includes significant monies to organizations such as the U.S. Global Climate Research Program, $11.5 billion. You may have heard Patrick Michael talking about this program and its deficient scientific reports. Now, over 50% of the $11 billion, $6.4 billion, goes to NASA, and much of NASA research is important and critical. We get a better understanding of what is happening in the world's climate from the satellites that NASA and the European Space Group puts up. Among them, the GRACE satellites show that there's no significant melting of the ice mass on the Earth, consequently, or on land. Consequently, there will be very insignificant rise in sea level from this melting ice, something that James Hansen, who is predicting major flooding, has failed to address. We're looking at maybe 6 to 7 inches per century. Not much to worry about. Also big on receiving money is the National Science Foundation on climate research, $1.6 billion. Much of this research is based upon models that have never been verified and validated, consequently, the products of which are little more than scientific speculation, not scientific knowledge. Another great recipient of these funds is the international climate change community, the IPCC. Ever wonder who's paying for these elaborate love fests, such as the one that will occur in Rio later this year? A good part of it comes from the United States budget. The State Department has spent $1.5 billion on this effort, and the Department of Treasury, $1.1 billion. Rather than massive budgets, we have a panel here who will discuss how they, with very tiny, tiny funds or no funds, are addressing the significant issues that and the deceits that arise from the IPCC reports. The first of which will be James Lehr, who is the science director for Heartland. It has been so for 15 years, specializing in energy and environment and climate. He's the author and co-author of 30 books, including the current Encyclopedia of Nuclear Energy. He gives over 40 lectures a year on behalf of the Heartland each year. Please welcome James Lear.
Thank you, Ken. I want to compliment everyone in the audience for being discerning enough to come to the right panel this morning, and I say that very seriously because it will be physically impossible for anyone upstairs to learn anything that they don't already know and haven't already heard. Their subject is the social and economic impacts of climate change, and we've heard that driven home by a majority of speakers, and none better than Roger at breakfast describing the mad world we live in. What we're doing here this morning, and I particularly, is going to get down to a level where we can all do some serious good. We know we've won the scientific debate, and it doesn't matter to governments, to the people who spend our money, but what we need to do, and what I do basically on a daily basis, is travel the North America for Heartland, talking to real people. We're very fortunate. We have a fellow who books me all over the country to meetings of manufacturers and salespeople and trade groups and professional societies who are interested in the subject. And I offer about 40 different seminars relating to every conceivable issue on energy, environment, water supply, and agriculture. And if you were to go to our website, you can find all these topics. So people come and ask me to talk about a myriad of things, and they know that 100% of the time, part of the talk will be on climate change. So I talk to real people across America, and I've learned a great deal from it in doing this the past 15 years, is that you don't want to talk over their head. I mean, we hear a lot of science here in the last couple of days. It's, you know, the really serious, detailed stuff. And that's way too complex for the average person in the public. So I've been able to boil it down to simple things that are intuitively obvious. And it's been very rewarding and satisfying to find out that 99%, and I'm not exaggerating, and 99% of my audiences, and I talk to a few hundred people a week and over 10,000 in the course of a year, are totally on our side. I mean, they're willing to accept the obvious, to understand the simple aspects of what climate change is all about. Where'd the clicker go? Oh, here it is. And I not only explain the folly of it, the madness of it, and why man is not responsible for any significant part of our climate, I go a step further. And I say, you know, as Roger made a statement that I will use from now on, it doesn't make any sense to save the planet by destroying the economy, that if you care about retaining our freedom and our economic well-being, it behooves you as citizens of our nation to help in the battle, to help educate. And I say to my audiences, if you walk out of here and you say, well, Jay gave an instant talk, I really like that, and I believe what he said, and that's it, I've failed. I've totally failed. And I asked my audiences, I said, I want you to feel that you owe it as a citizen of this country to spend 2 hours of every month spreading the word. If you recognize that climate change, man-caused global warming is a scam, a delusion, a fraud, whatever you want to call it, you need to share it with people who trust you. You don't have a stage to stand on with a large audience, but you have dozens of people who respect your veracity in the course of a year. You go to social events and athletic events, and instead of talking about your hobbies or your golf game or your kid's soccer game or whatever, talk about something as important as an issue that could conceivably destroy our nation's economy, and I make available and give them the tools to do it, which I'm going to give you today and will be on our website. I have a handful of simple slides, beginning with the one that you see, is carbon dioxide the devil or an angel? All of you know, of course, that it is an angel. And the next slide describes a composition of air, very simple pie diagram showing oxygen and nitrogen and all the other particles, and there's only a tiny bit of carbon dioxide in it. And the next slide shows that if the atmosphere was a dollar, there's not even a penny's worth of carbon dioxide in it. Everything is artistic. And then I show the atmospheric CO2 sources, and man is responsible for 3% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. 97% comes from the oceans and decaying plant matter. And then I show the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and 90% is water vapor, 4% is methane, 4% is carbon dioxide, and 2% are things like nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide. So only 3% of the greenhouse gases, only 4% of the greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, and only 3% of that 4% is caused by man. So the madness that Roger described just a little while ago at breakfast, the madness that he described is about 0.12% of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That's what we're responsible for. Carbon dioxide is 4%. We are responsible. When I say we, that's our transportation, our power plants, our factories. 3%. 3% times 4% is 0.12%. That's what this is all about. And the modelers try to say, yeah, but it's an important 0.12% of the greenhouse gases. It's patently absurd. And then we came up with a diagram that Heartland published in the February issue of Environment and Climate News, which shows the Earth, and every dot shows exactly what the greenhouse gases are. And the bulk of the dots, the green dots, are water vapor. And then we show all the other, what's carbon dioxide, and what is methane. And down at the bottom, there are 12 little dots. So there are 1,000 dots on that diagram. 10,000? Okay, sorry, thanks. And in the bottom right-hand corner are the dots that we are responsible for. 12 of them. 12 of them. I mean, the diagram just blows people away. I show it everywhere I go, and we'll hand out a color picture of it. And then we have I show a diagram of the variations in carbon dioxide over the last, what is that, 400,000 years. I can't read from here without my glasses. Then I show a picture of the declining impact of CO2. And this is something I'll talk about again in a few more minutes. But CO2 is absorbed by certain wavelengths. When you increase CO2, you've already used up the wavelength that absorbs it, so that it stops being an effective greenhouse gas holding heat in. And I came up with an analogy that is absolutely perfect for explaining this simple scientific fact to the public. If in your living room you have a large glass window that lets the light in, one very large, maybe a sliding door, but a huge glass area, and you want to keep the light out of your living room, and you put a curtain over the window, well, a certain amount of light will get through the curtain. I mean, you don't have a perfectly opaque window, so you darken your living room quite dramatically. Thank you so much. So you put another curtain over this first curtain, and you get a little darker. And then you put a third curtain over, and by now you have a totally opaque covering. What would happen now if you put a fourth and a fifth and a sixth curtain over the window? Nothing at all. Well, that's what we have. The first carbon dioxide is absorbed by the wavelength that absorbs carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As you add more carbon dioxide, less and less is absorbed, and this diagram shows that it's insignificant. So if we double carbon dioxide, its impact as a factor in heating up the globe by increasing the greenhouse effect is absolutely insignificant. Then one word slide. Without greenhouse gases, Earth would be frozen solid. Its average global temperature about minus 18 degrees centigrade, Fahrenheit. We are currently in a paradise of humanity with an average global temperature of 59 degrees. Pretty common statement. And then I go talk about adding in what I just said to you, that adding another 300 parts per million of CO2 to the air has been shown by literally thousands of experiments to greatly increase the growth of biomass production, but it would have virtually no effect on the temperature of the planet. And then I show Craig Idso. There have been 1,000 experiments. 1,000 experiments. I'm not exaggerating. 998 of them, this is absolutely accurate, have shown that increasing CO2 makes plants grow better. And here's Craig showing with the growth of a tree under conditions of different amounts of carbon dioxide. And finally, a slide that shows the percentage of growth increases of various vegetation. And that's it. 12 simple slides that I show. And then I give out to them the same handout you have with 18 simple pieces of information that everyone can explain, can understand. First, pointing out that we couldn't live here without CO2. The details of the 0.12%, explaining in detail, my curtain analogy. One little extra bit of science that if CO2 was warming the globe, the temperatures would increase more at elevation than low down, which has not been the case. Point out that we have 900,000 years of ice records, and we find that as the temperature changes, it leads CO2, not lags. In fact, by and large, as the Earth warms, a few centuries later, carbon dioxide comes out because it's totally logical. The oceans hold more CO2 when they're cold. So when you warm the Earth, after a while, the oceans warm up and CO2 comes out. So there's this long list of 18 pieces of science that I know the public can understand. I mean, I've tried it. I wrote a paper for the Ohio legislature a few years ago with 48 factoids about global warming. They're all understandable. I had to write it at about a 10th grade level for the Ohio legislature. And that whole list is available. But for my public lectures, I boiled it down to 18 things that I'm sure people can understand. I've tried it out, and they do. I just don't have any problem getting these things across. So you all have that. The other handout you have is my card. Heartland makes my business cards, and I've always, for 15 years, put interesting stuff on the back of it. For the last few years, I just selected 10 key points on global warming that's on the back of my card. And I go into a room, always generally this size, and I'm always able to get in advance. And on everybody's place, I do this myself, I go to every chair and I put my card. I never leave stuff out for people to pick up. I put my card on every chair or next to every plate in the room. My audience is average, or generally between 300 and 500 people. And when my talk is over and we have a break, I go around the room. There are no cards. Nobody fails to pick them up. People are interested. And then I explain, you can get these slides on the Heartland website or just email me with the number on the card. You have a handout of information. And if you believe me, and I can guarantee you 99% do, I say you owe the world, you owe society 2 hours of your month to help spread the word and save our economy. And invariably at the break, I go outside, and the comment I get is, 2 hours a month, wow. I mean, you're right. I can do that. I mean, that should be part of the rent that I pay in being part of our society. So that's my message. And here we're talking to each other in this wonderful conference. We're getting more information. But we've really got to do it one person at a time. The Tea Party is trying to create the mentality for the public to take back the government. And I try to create the same mentality. So if you walk out of here now and you say, that was interesting, I like what Jay had to say, it makes sense, and that's it, I failed again. But I don't fail. You are all here because you care. To some extent or another, you're all educators. And so I've given you now a simple way of educating people. If it's at a cocktail party, it's with the back of my card or the handout. If you have an opportunity to give a talk where you can show a few slides, you've got them. But this is a one person at a time war, and we can and we will win it. Thank you.